All aboard! Next stop, Chicago Junction.
And welcome to another episode of Chicago Junction, the radio program that is all about the amazing world of railroading, both the many facets of the industry, model railroading, and tall tales. I am your announcer, Brian Ballou, and here is our boss, the head of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, and Chief Electrical Engineer, Mr. John DeVita.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Chicago Junction from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Monday, July the 16th, the year 2018. Today, the panel will be talking about railroads and model railroads. And now to start today's broadcast, here is our announcer, Mr. Brian.
And thank you there, John. In my capacity now as assistant ringmaster to handle the chaos, I am Brian Ballou. I am a model railroader with Lionel and Garden Railways. I am an Operation Lifesaver volunteer. I've enjoyed trains all my life. And we have a big surprise for our audience. To my right is the ghost from the past.
Ta-da!
Mr. Shortline himself.
Hi, it's Doug Kenyuk here. I'm with the Railroad and Short Lines Club of Chicago, a longtime N-scaler, and a professor over at Wright College, and we like trains.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Berry. I'm a retired Chicago police sergeant, lifelong Lionel collector and operator. I'm a director with the Chicagoland Lionel Railroad Club out in New Lenox.
Hi, my name is Ron Stock, retired library director of Eisenhower Public Library, HO model railroader, and just general overall train enthusiast.
And I'm Dave DeRuska, retired locomotive engineer. Last place I worked was Metra. I am also the keeper of the Chicago Junction Facebook page, as well as another Facebook page called Chicago Railroad Historians. I also do a blog called Player with Railroads. And I am a teller of tall tales of railroading. Buy me breakfast or buy me a drink.
Why didn't you mention your petition drive to get the declaration?
Yes, I'm also working on a drive to get the city of Chicago to declare 1 month of the year Chicago Railroad History Month. And I will talk about that a little bit later.
Well, Doug, it's been a while since we have you here. You need to stretch your jaws a little bit to open up this show.
Okay, well, I got some news. First of all, we lost a couple of short lines. These were called Buckeye East Chicago and Buckeye Hammond. These were scrapyard, basically, just sidetracks to a scrapyard. They operated for about 2 years. One of them was leased out to Landisville Railroad to operate. Apparently, operating a short line for basically a scrapyard is probably not a good idea. So they reverted back to letting the IHB switch them. So we lost those.
So is that bad news when you leave your cars laying around? They might actually torch them?
Yeah, that's what it looked like. Of course, our radio show is called Chicago Junction. We now have a Chicago Junction short line.
Yay.
And there was an interesting question somebody asked me about the name, by the way, and we'll get to that in a minute. Progressive Rail got the contract to switch the Elk Grove Village Centrex Industrial District. And Chicago Terminal was doing it. They weren't living up to their contractual obligations. So UP brought in Progressive Rail, went out there June 3rd. They're cleaning out the ditches, getting rid of the weeds, clearing the tracks of debris and stuff, and doing general inspection and bringing the rail up to some kind of minimum standard. So apparently it was allowed to deteriorate for a while.
Now, was that an Iowa interstate?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was Iowa Pacific.
Iowa Pacific, yeah.
Now, the other two operations, the Chicago terminal, if you want to call it that, the Bensonville, all the stuff that was stored, the old Metro coaches and stuff were moved to Bensonville. They're hidden behind the bushes there. The Goose Island is dead. Sippy Metal just shut down, so they're moving out. And the last one is General Iron, and they only ship about 2 cars a week. So that operation's about ready to fold. So Chicago terminal will be disappearing from this area. Just don't know when. So that leads to this question I had about Chicago Junction. Now, Chicago Junction, once upon a time, before Conrail, was a subsidiary of the New York Central. Active subsidiary. Bad name, owned equipment. Then it was merged into New York Central. New York Central merged into the Penn Central. Penn Central was taken over by Conrail. And the question was, how come then Norfolk Southern, which now operates on the tracks that used to be Chicago Junction, didn't make a fuss about the Chicago Junction name as part of their heritage? Like they bring up the Virginia Railroad now and stuff. Right. And UP, if you try to make something with C&W on it, there are lawyers are at your front door saying, give me a cut of your profits. Right. And I told them, I have the USRA write-up from that period when they were studying this to merge. And it basically said, when the government took it over, because Conrail was a quasi-government operation until they sold enough bonds to buy themselves back from the government, that all previous names had to be let go. However, Conrail, when Norfolk Southern and CSX were cutting it up, they resurrected NYC and PRR so they could divide up the freight cars. That's why you can see freight cars labeled today NYC and PRR. So he asked me how come Chicago Junction is not copyrighted by Norfolk Southern, like C&W is copyrighted by UP.
And
I said prior to 1980, that stuff usually went out in the public domain, and that was it.
now, Chicago, the CJ Yard, which I worked in and out of over by the stockyards, that was always called the CJ Yard, and was by the big industrial, all those warehouses and stuff.
Central Manufacturing District?
Central Manufacturing District, which actually came up today on a Chicago history website. People were asking about that.
As near as, the physical track and the land under it probably still has a title of Chicago Junction, because every time a railroad merged, they're not going to spend the money to go to every county and change the title of the land. So that part still exists. But the operating name, that's long gone. Like Chicago River in Indiana, that was merged in, and it was sometime in the late 70s because it was dissolved before Conrail took over.
So, in other words, the new Chicago Junction can do that. They can use that name.
They can use that name. New railroad in the south called Decatur in eastern Illinois. It's taking over the tracks. Now CSX is on selling off lines. Florida, Alabama, and down here in southern Illinois. So they're taking over the line that runs from Decatur to Montezuma, Indiana, just south of Danville through Paris to Terre Haute. One of those lines is what they call the Egyptian line south of Danville, which I already talked to Brian. What is the Egyptian line for the people listening?
Yeah.
Is that the old NYC South?
Yeah, going through Cairo.
And then they also said, my buddy sent me this, he says, and the other parts are part of the Big Four.
Mm-hmm.
And also,
yeah, but that was the line through Cairo. That's why it was. That's where they had the short line, Crab Orchard, and Egyptian.
Right. Now, the line has not started up yet. They just put out the certificate that allows them to hire displaced workers from CSX. Now, they're looking for engineers, laborers, track maintenance. So they have to do that first before they can file to become an official railroad. They just posted last week on the STB. So it's not official yet.
All right, Doug, can we take a break a second? We got a phone call.
Let's go.
Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, gang.
Oh, it's you.
Just want to say hello and hope you're off to a good start. Everybody's having a good summer, I hope.
Sure we are.
Yeah?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
We got no complaints.
So who do you have there? You have a full house tonight, or?
We actually have a full house. Everybody's here.
Well,
Oh.
Mr. Accordion isn't here yet.
No, Mr. Smallwood's not here, and but we have Doug here tonight.
Howdy,
Hi, Doug.
sir.
I thought I heard your voice there.
There you go.
How's things in academia there?
It could be better.
He says you're late on turning in a book report, John.
2 lines, no talking.
I got the Cliff Notes and the classic comic to do it. So
I watched
remember
the
those
movie.
days? So anyway, I heard you mentioning the new Chicago Junction, and I haven't seen anything online about it anywhere. Has there been some news online anywhere I could look at? I just Google it.
Just Google it.
Is it?
Yeah. Trains Magazine even ran an
I'm
article
on the
on it.
computer now as usual, so the best I can do right now.
Yeah,
So,
railroad started up June 1st. It's run by Progressive Rail. Got the contract.
I'm going to have to see if they have a company picnic, so I can tell all my cousins we can start going to a picnic again this summer. How's
There
that?
you go.
That's where we got the title for the show, the old place. So, anywho, everybody have a good one, all right?
All right,
the
John.
same.
Be
Good to
seeing you
hear
one of
from
these
you.
days, I hope.
We'll make it.
I hope. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. All right, so you want to tell everybody what, we already did that. Oh, last one. I don't know if you saw this. Nice video. Some French company, engineering company, you saw this? He's laughing already. Their idea is to have a self-contained coach that leaves Union Station on a flat car or something, rolls into the airport, attaches to a plane, takes you to your destination, it drops the body off, and rolls you back to the next Union Station.
Yep. And I think what would be really cool is what if they would do is they would use it like a bomber, and actually just drop it onto the tracks and automatically couple it to a train that's in motion. That would be so cool.
That would work.
Making sure it's on a bouncing Betty.
Now,
It gets in front of the engine instead of behind it.
well, there was also a couple of months ago, there was the one where they had the airplane, but it was on a tether to a rail car. It would come in for a landing, and then when it would take off, the tether would be guided, the plane would be guided. It's more like a glider than a plane, and it would be pulled along, the cart would pull it along on the tracks, and the plane would glide behind it to the next station.
Until the first bridge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they don't cover those parts.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like looking at this thinking, remember that bus thing in China where the guy had
Yeah.
the double-decker bus that they found rotting in some
The
garage?
scam, yeah.
I'm like thinking, it's about the same thing.
Yeah, that would be funny if they hadn't done a piece on the CBS News this morning. Some company in Silicon Valley has a one-person plane driven by 8 battery-powered propellers.
I thought you were going to say mice.
No, it's got a 25-mile operational limit. They said you can go from Silicon Valley to San Francisco in 8 minutes. They says it takes 5 minutes in the simulator to learn how to fly it.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's 4 minutes longer than the people getting licenses from the state of Illinois.
You mean driver's licenses.
Yes.
Not
I am-
pilot's licenses.
I am so happy I'm retired.
Yeah, it'll be a big seller there in Silicon Valley where people got money.
Yeah.
But the only news that I have on the Chicagoland Lionel Railroad Club is the Lionel Car Collectors Association will be having their annual meeting here in Chicago later this month, and they will be spending time visiting both the Chicagoland Lionel Railroad Club and the Illinois Live Steamers as part of their excursion day. So we're very happy that they're going to take time to spend time with us, and we are moving forward with our plans for our 25th anniversary for the club next summer. Other than that, I get to play trains with my grandkids, so life is good.
I got several articles that I saw in First and Fast, which look pretty cool. They did a several-page article, probably about 20 pages long, with some great color as well as black and white photos of the. It's called the Tale of Two Streamliners, and basically it's the North Shore line and also the Illinois terminal line, and they ran on both ran on the Chicago L in the 50s, 60s, and may have gotten into the 70s.
No, I don't think the IT ever
not
made
quite
it in
that
Chicago. Yeah.
IT ran exclusively between Granite City and St. Louis.
Yes,
It
and
was downstate, not up here.
okay,
But the North Shore did.
Yep. No Chicago to Milwaukee.
right.
And it stopped in early 63?
Yeah.
It was 62.
61, wasn't it?
Yep.
One of those three numbers.
Pick one.
And they had another interesting article, which I thought was pretty cool. They combined streetcars with railroads, and what they did was they took pictures of, or had some people had taken pictures of the various, like Milwaukee Road, Baltimore, Ohio Railroad, and Illinois Central, and some other famous railroads, and they captured streetcars going underneath the bridges of each of them. And it's kind of cool because nowadays most of the railroad bridges you go under are not labeled as to what the railroad is that they or that are there. And they had a long article in there too of talking about the Burlington commuter trains. And one of the things which I seen in an article originally by the Burlington Historical Society, and was sort of surprised. I was born in '51, and I was surprised that the modern day commuter cars were being started service in, I think, the summer of 1950. And actually some of them they have photographs of some of them being pulled by steam engines, because steam was still running at that time period. And then of course they got pictures of them with some of the modern E-units that Burlington had. My question is actually to the two Metro people, do you know if any of those cars are still running, or?
Yes.
I kind of figured they would be.
Believe it or not, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Burlington cars were stainless steel, so they lasted a lot longer. The Northwestern bilevels were pressed steel, and they rotted out a lot sooner. And there's still some of those still floating around.
There's still a lot of the Pullmans, but the majority of the Bud Builts are still around.
Yeah, they shuffle them around between the different lines. They're not exclusive to the Burlington line anymore, so you'll see them on the Rock Island. You'll see them. I don't think you'll see them on the UP lines, but you'll see them on the Metro controlled lines, Southwest Service.
Yeah, because a lot of the double deckers you see on the UP lines are the new ones that were built.
Yeah.
I live in Elmwood Park, so of course that used to be, I think, the old Milwaukee Road,
yeah.
Line, and then also
and they had stainless steel also.
yeah, and they still got. I mean, that's the interesting part, that whether they're newer cars or older cars, they're still making them out of stainless steel. And I think that I personally always like that look because it always looks clean and neat and doesn't, as you pointed out, it probably doesn't rust out as much as some of the other material that they may have used.
The two VRE cars that were in residence at 50th and Wentworth aren't there. So they've either sent them to be rehabbed or they're back in service.
They're actually at the Western Avenue yards. All the VREs are at Western Avenue. They also have 6 Highliners sitting in Western Avenue yards for some reason, too. Last time we went downtown.
Yeah, they took away all the Highliners that were sitting on the Fox Lights line. Sub. They're all gone.
You mean the graffiti wall over there?
Yeah.
Yeah, run by Roundout.
Mm-hmm. And but I've actually saw at least 2 cars that have been rehabbed because they are in the new paint scheme.
The ugly new paint scheme.
The paint scheme trying to paint them like the diesels.
Right.
Oof.
Yeah, they're pretty bad.
Although I have to admit, the 100 series engines that they're as they're coming through rebuild and they're painting them into the new paint scheme, that paint scheme is starting to grow on me. I'm starting to like it. With the blue that fades to the silver.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no! We didn't say it was a bad scheme
For the engines.
For the engines.
for the engines.
For the cars, it's not good.
Have you seen the repainted Virginia Express cars?
No.
They came back. They're sort of like silver on top and that blue on the bottom, and it fades from bottom to top. And then it's got like some kind of...
Yeah, it's got the striping, and the striping goes up at the center
yeah,
of the car.
it goes up in the middle. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about, and I've actually seen them on the UP trains.
Yeah, they're sitting in the Western Avenue yards on the Milwaukee, the old Milwaukee side.
They've got the Don Orsino Memorial hot dog with mustard running up and down the line parallel to Vincennes Avenue. I mean, I don't want to say it's ugly.
It is.
It's Ujili. It looked like something from back when I was young and would stay out all night drinking.
Well, we always call it the Maxwell Street hot dog locomotive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be appropriate if it wasn't a slur on the Maxwell Street hot dogs. When it's clean, it's not a bad-looking engine. Unfortunately, I think it's allergic to soap and water.
Well, I don't know how often they run them through the wash rack at 47th Street. I always thought when the trains came in, they ran them through the wash rack, but I could be wrong about that.
Well, they do run it through. One of these times they're going to use water.
I did see it right after that really hard, long rain we had about a week ago,
Yeah.
and it looked nice. Most of the time, it looks like somebody turned it over and just dragged it down the street for a mile or two.
We're in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I think part of the problem, too, is that the specific locomotives smoke a little more than others. They have issues with diesel fumes, which is supposed to be resolved when they upgrade them to Tier 4. I don't know if they've done that with that locomotive or not.
Last week Ron was here, Ron Small, and he was talking about traction railroads. And in the First the Fast, which is the September 2018 issue, they have a 3-page article about the Milwaukee traction, which was installed in March 26, 2019, excuse me. And they have some nice pictures of it. It's very cool looking car. They also have a map of where you can catch some of the routes in Milwaukee and some of the destinations that it goes to throughout the city. So,
And they're operating for free for a year, thanks to the Potawatomi Casino, which the cars don't even go near
Makes sense.
yet.
Yep.
They plan on extending the line.
Yeah, Ron was talking about that last month, about their extension, but they're not officially open yet or something like that.
No, they've been running test trains.
Yeah, that's it.
so
Yeah, because they haven't finished the route.
Right. And I guess there are points where there are no wire and the car operates on battery power, where there is no overhead catenary.
Worth a trip up and check it out.
Yeah.
Well, that'll make it easier switching around the yard.
They don't have much of a yard.
That's probably why they need battery power.
Yeah, it's just a barn. It's like a two-door barn.
It's better than what happened in St. Louis. They built that loop trolley. Now the completion date's 2022. The amount of money they spent on it's the same amount of money that the Cardinals football team is spending to build a new stadium in L.A. They'll be moved into that stadium before that trolley line's operational.
Oh, well.
And nobody wants the Coliseum.
And nobody wants to ride that loop line because at the time when they planned it, Uber and Lyft and half a dozen other things weren't in existence
Yeah.
yet. Now they're in existence, and the guy goes, so why are we building this again? And of course, they're so far along, they're going to go and complete it.
Right. Nah, we'll go another 5 minutes.
Yeah, we can do
I got some stuff.
All right, let's hear
Okay.
it.
Chicago Union Station.
Woo.
No, not woohoo.
Oh,
The developers announced plans to remake historic Chicago Union Station on June 25th. The critics of the proposal have outnumbered the fans by an overwhelming margin. The author of this article also quoted some people from my Facebook page, Chicago Railroad historians. The oft-repeated comment was an abomination. Others said, all tarted up by the real estate whores. Looks like my aunt wearing a silly hat at a wedding, and perhaps best, putting a streamlined dome on a heavyweight Pullman. On Twitter, many smart alecks had a field day mashing up photos of Chicago Union Station with old Metro coaches converted into hotel rooms and putting huge advertising signs on the new structure. Essentially, they want to put a modern glass box on top of old Union Station, and it is horrendously hideous. It is really ugly. So.
Hey, it worked for Soldiers Field.
Yeah, right. Well, that's a lot
Not
of
really.
a lot of critics mentioned that too. They said, "Oh, look, it works so well for Soldiers Field. We'll screw up Union Station too." Well, I'll skip the thing about the Illinois Tollway. It says it appears to be close to a deal, but they're not.
Nope. Still negotiating.
There's a group in South Bend that wants to return the South Shore Line to downtown. The new alignment would serve as a transport hub for Greater South Bend and make the city a destination once again on the South Shore Line, not just another stop on the way to Chicago. Well, I guess they tore down a lot of South Bend during the urban renewal period. Let's see what else.
oh, come on, let's do our favorite story.
Which one's that?
ITM.
ITM.
Noblesville.
Oh, I've got that in here. Yeah.
Well, you want to take the break first, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, before we get to that one.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go station identification.
And you are listening to Chicago Junction on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVito Broadcast Center on Monday, July 16th, the year 2018. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now back to Chicago Junction and our panel.
Well, welcome back.
Before we get to the Illinois Transportation Museum, which is a saga in and of itself, I don't know if anybody remembers the Indiana scrap metal dealer who was accused of demolishing historic bridge,
Yes.
the Monon Bridge. Well, he wants the federal charges dismissed against him. His attorney said Thursday that he plans to ask a federal judge to toss out the interstate transportation of stolen property charge. He sold the bridge for $18,000 to an Illinois scrap dealer. Between December 2014 and January 2015, after two failed attempts to purchase the bridge from the city of Hammond, according to court documents, he negotiated with Hammond to scrap the bridge's metal in 1991 and again in September 2014. The Indiana Department of Natural Resources ordered Morrison to stop work in 2015 after discovering he was dismantling the bridge without a permit. The Indiana Department of Environmental Management was inspecting the city at the same time and found creosote-soaked timbers and steel were left in the river. Morrison's attorney said the city never offered proof it owned the bridge. His attorney, an attorney with the U.S. Justice Department Environmental Crimes, said the issue of whether the city or another entity owned the bridge doesn't matter because Morrison wasn't permitted to scrap the bridge. Morrison had no rightful claim to the bridge, he said, and it's a felony because Morrison took the bridge and crossed state lines to sell the scrap. The presiding judge called the case weird and fascinating. He'll review a motion to dismiss the case once it's filed. This seems ridiculous. This is so weird, the judge said. It's a bridge that's been sitting out there for 30 years. Yeah,
They want to save the bridge. Where's the rail trail, guys, when we need them?
Okay, Indiana Transportation Museum has until, well, the date's passed, July 12th, to vacate its longtime home at Forest Park in Noblesville. In an order issued Friday, Hamilton Court Judge Paul A. Felix denied a request by the Transportation Museum, which had occupied about 10 acres in Forest Park since in the 1970s, for a preliminary injunction to delay its eviction. The museum filed suit in Hamilton Court in early May against the city of Noblesville and the Hoosier Heritage Port Authority after the city chose to not renew the museum's lease for the space and gave ITM until June 1st to move out. Museum leaders argued that the city's timeline wasn't reasonable and asked the judge to give them 18 months to 2 years to move their property from the site. The museum has a memorandum of understanding to move to Logansport, about 60 miles from Noblesville, but museum officials say it will take time to safely move and preserve 78 historic cars and engines, several buildings, including the historic Hobbs Station, and more than 3 miles of track and switch. Well, there was an emergency effort to try to save as much of the equipment there as possible, and already a number of the pieces of the collection have been cut up as the museum struggles to obey the local judge's order to vacate the property. But even as workers with acetylene torches and backhoes have gone about their grim task, a number of important cars and locomotives have been saved. The most notable victory was obvious on Thursday night as crews from the Kentucky Steam Heritage Corp oversaw the loading of 7 flatbed trucks carrying major parts of nickel plate 282 number 587, the former mainline excursion engine stored at an ITM shop awaiting restoration. The USRA Light Mikado, built by Baldwin in 1918, will continue to be owned by the Illinois Transportation Museum. The 282 is headed for the former Louisville and Nashville shops in Ravenna, Kentucky, where KSHC plans to locate per an agreement with CSX Transportation. Kentucky Steam is already working on the restoration of Chesapeake and Ohio 284 number 2716 at the Kentucky Railway Museum in New Haven. To move the 587, the museum and KSHS engaged the services of Underwood Machinery Transport IND, I don't know what that is, of Indianapolis, which was involved in moving the engine out of Broad Ripple Park in Indianapolis in the 1980s, when the locomotive first went to ITM. Kentucky Steam also purchased a former Pennsylvania Railroad Railway Post Office car, which ITM had been using as a tool car. Another preservation group, near and dear to Brian's heart, the Heston Steam Museum, was also on site this week, having acquired former Indianapolis Power and Light 040 Fireless Cooker No. 1, be transported to its 155-acre site near LaPorte, where the organization operates a small, narrow-gauge steam railroad. At least one other major institution, the Age of Steam Roundhouse in Sugar Creek, Ohio, also has an interest in some of the equipment. Representatives of the privately owned steam facility visited Noblesville last week and marked 14 cars as AOS, with acquisition to be negotiated in the coming weeks. Other notable equipment saved include the former Cedar Rapids and Iowa Motor 55, home built by Detroit United Railways in 1915, the former L&N Heavyweight Diner Cross Keys built by ACF in 1930. Meanwhile, anything left on the site after July 12th is presumably considered abandoned, and according to court order would become the property of the city of Noblesville. City leaders have made clear their hostility to the Rail Museum, so the worst could be expected for whatever is left. The museum has more than 100 items on its roster. Already a number of pieces of historic equipment have been scrapped, and the situation remains fluid. Milwaukee Road SW1 1613 and Milwaukee 867 were, I believe, cut up. There's also 5 Chicago Transit 4000 Series Transit Authority cars, and work motor S369 was also cut up. The list goes on. I mean, it's pretty depressing. And Trains Magazine had an interesting article about what museums need to think about in the future. You know, given this sort of thing, museums are coming up against a lot of issues these days with townships that don't want them, people that want to convert their trackage to rail trails, which was the case in Noblesville, where the two cities wanted to get rid of the rail and have a hike bike trail there, and
Yeah, they're going to make $1 million on it.
yeah, and you know, obviously the relationship between the cities and the museum was not all that good, and this whole thing was initially precipitated by a group of volunteers who had a bug up their butt about the museum and complained about safety violations, and the FRA came in, shut them down. Most of the claims were not true, but it was the wedge that the city needed to come in and complain about the museum's operations. They also claimed that they were polluting the grounds of the park, which again is false. But you know, you can't fight City Hall.
The building where the pollutants were coming out of was actually owned by the Park Service,
Yeah, right.
not the museum.
Yeah.
And it wasn't on museum property. EPA fined the city.
Well, you know, the truth is flexible these days.
If you tell a big enough lie
Yeah.
and you repeat it often enough
Yes.
and loud enough, everyone believes it's true.
Yep, it worked well for the
And there
Germans.
is history to back up that statement.
Well, you know.
Yep.
You know, why did it, you know, like I say, why did it all of a sudden, did CSX decide to remove the switches? And then afterwards, all this stuff started.
That was another issue that the article in Trains brought up, is that you have to maintain a good relationship with your connecting railroads. You know, you can't let them isolate you, because you know they can't move stuff out of there in an efficient manner. They just can't
Yeah.
rail it out. They got to truck it out.
Yeah, and the judge, who obviously is such a rail fan, said, you can truck it all out.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they did manage to sell the Flagler car. And that's where a lot of the money for the trucks came
Okay.
from.
Huh.
And they sold that for almost $500,000.
Well, if you can get every armor transport trailer from the 1st Armored Division at Fort Knox, you might be able to save some of the cars.
I think now that the deadline has passed. What today?
Yeah, today's the 12th.
Yep. This is it. It was the drop dead date. So I'm assuming that Noblesville will move in and basically demolish everything that's left over. You know, unless there's some sort of agreement between the parties that have purchased the equipment.
Well, it's like we said, the Age of Steam Roundhouse put tags on them and said they'll negotiate.
Right.
And to get it out.
Right.
And the thing is the city going to honor that?
Right. Exactly. They're not bound to it because the court order said you're out by the 12th, and after that it belongs to the city. Well, how about some happy news? We all know about or maybe don't know about the return of the Rock Island Rocket. Will be coming, but
Yeah.
there's also another train coming, the White River Rocket. Special charter on Metro's Rock Island District from LaSalle Street Station to Joliet on Saturday, September 29th. Enjoy a luncheon in the beautifully restored Joliet Union Station and return to Chicago in time to visit the Loop and enjoy dinner on your very own. Then join us in the Burlington Room at Chicago Union Station, where we celebrate 50 years of the Passenger Train Journal with presentations by well-known historians and photographers. Join founder Kevin McKinney and editor Mike Schaefer on September 29th for a special event marking the 50th anniversary of PTJ. The day starts at the ride aboard the White River Rocket, a special chartered run departing LaSalle Street Station in Chicago for Rundown Metro's Rock Island District. Photo stops are planned along the route, with an expected midday arrival at Joliet. Upon arrival, you are invited to join us for lunch in the ballroom at Joliet Union Station. Our return trip to Chicago will include a brief stop at Metro's famed Rocket House at 47th Street Yard, a former Rock Island maintenance facility. A scheduled early afternoon arrival in Chicago will leave you plenty of time to explore the Loop and enjoy dinner on your own. Following the dinner break, we will meet in the beautifully restored Burlington Room at Chicago Union Station for an evening of presentations by top railroad historians and photographers. As part of Amtrak's program to redevelop Chicago Union Station, the former Women's Lounge was renovated and restored to its former glory as the Burlington Room in 2016, providing the perfect location for our show. Your tickets includes the ride on the White River Rocket, luncheon at Gillette Union Station, the Rocket House stop, and admission to the evening program at Chicago Union Station. Please join us in Chicago on September 29th. Tickets are $125 per person, and you can get them online at shop.whiteriverproductions.com/products/PTJ50th, and this is on our Facebook page. So, I'm considering going to that.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Sounds like fun.
What did they say the price was?
$125.
Did they say
That's
what
not
what
bad,
time it
no.
is scheduled to depart
It's
from LaSalle Street?
early. I think around 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
That ain't bad.
No. Yeah, but I don't get up that early anymore. I retired. Yeah, I could. More information. I know that there was. There may be more information on our on the Facebook post. So if not, I will definitely update that with the time.
Well, definitely.
And that's it for me.
That sounds good. Oh, you want me?
Don't you have news?
Yes, I do.
Aside from your new artillery show.
Leviathan has found a home.
Hey,
I finally found out where it went. It's going to Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. The locomotive owned by Dave Clokey, sister to the Jupiter, who's been a mainstay around here and had provided some, has been sold to a gentleman in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, near Lancaster. Leviathan, a wedding and special events venue in Lancaster County, to be exact, is where it's going to be set. A ticketed grand opening for the event was actually on the 3rd and 4th of July, including displays of the locomotive under steam at the Stone Gables Estate, a 275-acre farm that includes a working horse ranch. Parent company is a well-funded nonprofit whose stated purpose is to support abandoned children worldwide. The centerpiece is an 1872 Gothic Revival style star barn that had been disassembled and relocated to the site. The map venue shows Leviathan as part of an ensemble of venues. The engine is at this time on 120 feet of panel track. While the unusual location, the setting may turn out to be a big opportunity for the locomotive. Project coordinator Steve Tarocco told Trains New Wire that the venue also purchased Clokey's replica of the Lincoln funeral car. And we'll have more on that after this. And that Clokey will also build a combine and 2 coaches to go on a new 3-mile railroad that will be laid partially on a half-mile of right-of-way that belonged to the now abandoned Harrisburg, Portsmouth, Mountjoy, and Lancaster Railroad, and which hosted the Lincoln funeral train in 1865. We'll be laying the track down on this right-of-way and building 2.5 miles of new track through the property. We plan to build a copy of the turntable at the Nevada State Railroad Museum, wooden water tank, and we now have wooden covered railroad bridge, harp stand switches, and more. The operation, called the Harrisburg, Lincoln, and Lancaster Railroad, will not be opened as a tourist railroad, but will operate for special events, weddings, and corporate events. Clokey built the locomotive over a 10-year period at his company shops in the suburban Chicago city of Elgin. He debuted it in 2009, added the Lincoln funeral car replica in 2015 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the Lincoln assassination. The steam locomotive traveled to tourist railroads, museums, and festivals over the years, was stored at Ohio's Age of Steam Roundhouse in recent years, while the funeral car replica went to Duluth for display. Lokoki got the idea for building the 35-ton locomotive while watching the Lincoln documentary. I'm into history, and you cannot help but be awed by these wonderful locomotives, he told Trains in 2009. Leviathan, the sister engine of the Jupiter, Central Pacific 440 that was nose-to-nose when Union Pacific's 119 at Promontory Summit, Utah, on May 10, 1869, to mark the completion of the first transcontinental railroad. The Schenectady Locomotive Works built the original Leviathan in August 1868 as part of an order for 3 other 440s, the Jupiter, number 60, the Storm, and number 61, Whirlwind, number 62. And the 440 was a standard locomotive of its day, and thousands were built to every gauge for use across the nation. Clokey built the replica using the plans for the replica of Jupiter, and now displayed at the Golden Spike historic site at Promontory Summit. The Leviathan is the first standard gauge replica built in the U.S. in 30 years, since O'Connor Engineering in California constructed the 2 Promontory engines in 1979. Leviathan set to burn oil, feature air brakes, and appliances the original did not have. The backhead is equipped with 2 water glasses to conform to modern standards, ejectors to ensure safe water supply, but replica water pumps adorn the locomotive's crossheads. The locomotive features a Russian blue boiler jacket, brass bands, ornate oil cups, and a host of other decorative items from the 19th century. In short, it's a real jewel. Now, the locomotive itself is going, the Lincoln funeral car is going to join it at the end of September, by the end of September. It's coming down from Duluth, be in this area August about 23rd, 24th. It'll be on display up in Antioch for 2 weeks, from the 25th of August to September 9th. $5 to walk through the car. Be on display, like I said, in downtown Antioch.
I assume they're trucking it in.
They're trucking it in. I was contacted by Fred Haberkamp. I talked to him and said, well, you need help putting it together? He goes, yep.
Yep. Yep.
And I said, okay, so I'll be up there for comic relief. Another friend of ours will be there. He and his wife will be out there in their lounge chairs having the video camera going, watching us put it together.
Yeah.
Anyone who has not had the opportunity to see the Lincoln funeral car
When it was on display
when it was in Hammond, you owe it to yourself to see it. My wife and I spent a Sunday afternoon driving over to Hammond and waiting in line, and we got to walk through the car, and they did a beautiful job doing the interior and everything, and it is $5 extremely well spent.
Well, the lady who was involved in getting the furniture, who dug up all the furniture from the period to put in the car, lives in Antioch. And that's one of the reasons why they're going to put it on display up there. It'll be its last time before it hits to Pennsylvania.
With all the Civil War reenactors in the Chicago area, they shouldn't have any trouble getting reenactors to turn out for the honor guard and the pickets around the car. So it will be a real slice of history.
Well, we'll see what happens
Yeah.
when it arrives.
Well, thank God the engine's not there, Brian. It'd take you a full week to brasso all the brass on the engine. You did such a beautiful job with the engine when it was in Hammond, the engine looked like it was ready for Admiral's Week inspection.
Hey, and only did it in a day. Until it started raining. It's like washing your car.
Yeah, waxing it.
Yeah, sit there, wash, wax it, get it all set just right. Sun shining bright, but you're going to have a thunderstorm.
So, talk about Chicago Railroad History Month a little bit. Earlier this year, I decided that I didn't have enough to do with my life, and so I embarked upon the idea of getting the city of Chicago to declare 1 month of the year Chicago Railroad History Month. And the impetus for this was the Great Railroad Fair that took place in Chicago in 1948 and 1949. It was sort of the apex of the rail industry in this country. After that, the fortunes of the railroads went downhill up and through the 60s and 70s when things started to look up for the railroads. Well, in the interim of all these years, people have forgotten the importance of railroads. They look at them as a nuisance. I had to wait for the train. It was sitting at the crossing, and it took forever to get across the crossing. Or, my train was 5 minutes late today. What's wrong with the railroad? Or people that just blithely trespass over the tracks, have no concept that it's private property. And we've moved very far away of what the importance of the railroads are. And I think the railroads themselves are a lot to blame. There was a time in a day when the railroads focused on public relations and publicity for what they did. Plus, many people, many families had family members that worked for the railroads. Between, I think it was 1930 and somewhere in the 1970s or 60s, railroad employment dropped by 89%. A lot of that had to do with the fact that steam locomotives were supplanted by the diesel, which required a great deal less maintenance, which meant a lot less people working in back shops maintaining the locomotives. Changes in crew consists, the loss of the caboose, and now you're dealing with basically two-man crews in freight, and the railroads would love to make that a one-man crew. In other words, you just make the engineer glorified truck driver. And there are safety issues involved with that. But I
was going to say that
right, and there's there's fights between the unions and the railroads about this, and it's gone all the way to Washington, and the railroads continue to say that they can do it safely, and especially with the coming of positive train control, that should make one-man crews so much easier to do. Well, anyways, getting beyond that and talking about Chicago Railroad History Month, my idea was if the city would proclaim 1 month that it wouldn't cost the city anything. Basically, it would be a proclamation where groups interested in railroad history could take that month and highlight different aspects of railroad history. And I've been banding about ideas with other people. It could be something as simple as, a neighborhood group that the railroad ran through and they had a station in could have an exhibit at their historical society talking about the railroad history of the community. It could be something done in Pullman. Pullman is, now that it's a national monument and there's the National Park Service is involved, there could be educational programs there. Something as simple as putting out menus that were on trains. How to cook a railroad meal. What could you get on the train? There's a lot of opportunity here, and so far I've had 4 organizations that have signed on endorsing this project. One, the Chicago History Museum, which is a big deal for me, and my union, the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, which also sent a very nice letter to the mayor of Chicago, encouraging him to do this, and a couple of the steam museums. So I recently got an email from the mayor's office saying we received your request and directing me to a website where I filled out a form requesting a proclamation specific to Chicago Railroad History Month. I did that a couple days ago, and it could take a while, but I'm feeling positive that this is a no-brainer. I mean, it's not gonna hurt the city to do this.
You got to remember, like I say, you got to know where you've been to know where you're going.
Right. I think it's a good opportunity for like Operation Lifesaver.
Yeah.
We talk about safety around the tracks.
Yeah, we do it, but
Right. But it might be something that I'm working up a sort of a curriculum for the whole all the different ideas that could possibly be.
Yeah, we could talk about and even jobs on the railroad. It's like talking them with the scouts when we do the railroad merit badge. They do have a section where they talk about all the different employment opportunities on the railroad.
Right.
As few as they are.
Right.
But to say, hey, this isn't a bad job.
No. If you're willing to give up your life.
Yeah.
Well, certain people. So not everybody in the railroad business gives up their life. But if you're in your operating department, you might as well figure you're not going to have a life for a while.
Right. You gotta wait till you get your whiskers.
Yeah.
And coming in with gray hair doesn't hurt. Does not help.
No, it doesn't. As they say in the business, if you don't have the seenie, you get the weenie.
Well, if you got the gray hair to start with, they don't know when you're scared.
Okay. Talking about scared, let's go.
Right.
We do have an entrant for this year's Darwin Award.
Yeah, but they lived.
Yeah, they did. They actually did.
It's unfortunate.
Scared train hoppers. They're train hoppers.
Like grasshoppers.
Yeah, I know. Call 911 to be rescued. Charged after clinging to train for 60 miles. Doylestown, Ohio. A bad decision by two men to hop onto a CSX train led to a bizarre 911 call from one of the trespassers as the train rumbled from Huron County to Wayne County. Investigators said Christian Hale, 20, and Kevin Sloan, 24, jumped onto a moving train in Willard around 4 a.m. Tuesday. But when the train picked up speed, the two men couldn't get off and hung on the outside of two cars for 60 miles. Wayne County Captain Doug Hunter estimates speeds reached 45 to 50 miles per hour during the wild ride. Near Doylestown, Hale frantically dialed 911 and explained the confusing situation to the dispatcher. I'm on a train. Dispatcher responded, "You're on a train?" Hale said, "Yeah, and it's going really fast, and I don't know where it's going." Hale, who told the dispatcher he was scared and gave an unusual answer when the operator asked him, why was he on the train? "It's better than walking." "It's scaring the out of us." Shaving cream. The fact that the person was able to answer to call 911 while he's hanging on to the side of the train in itself is very, very unusual, Hunter said. The dispatcher notified CSX would stop the train at Whitman Road Crossing, Chippewa Township. However, the train took off. Hoppers took off. Deputies found them about a mile away. Body camera video capturing their arrest, their charge of trespassing. "I thought it was going to stop in Willard, and it didn't. I should have never got on that train," Hale said. "I know it was a stupid idea, and I should have never have done it. I wasn't going to, and I never will again." CSX, which has its own police department, could pursue additional charges. At CSX, safety is our main priority. It is never safe for members of the public to board train rail equipment. Trespassing on rail equipment in railroad tracks is extremely dangerous and illegal, said spokesperson Gail Loban. According to Operation Lifesaver, Ohio ranked 11th in the country in railroad trespass casualties in 2017 with 15 deaths and 13 injuries.
reminds me of the time that I was on the Northwestern on the old line, taking a train to Milwaukee, and another train went by us, and here on a empty piggyback car is a guy hanging on to the thing that holds the trailer with this terrified look on his face. It's like, so I radioed the train, and I said, you got a guy hanging on to, and they go, oh, we know about him. We've already thrown him off twice. Nantucket sleigh ride,
People need.
Station in San Diego. Go out and watch the morning trailer train take off, container train. We call that the Tijuana Express. Everybody come across the border during the night, you'll find them on the train.
Mm-hmm.
Here they are leaving town. You see them, the heads pop up in the wells, going all the way, heading to L.A.
Hey, a side note here on the 26th of this month at the Beverly Arts Center, starting at 7 o'clock, I will be participating in a reading event where we tell stories, and I will be telling my story. The event is called the Frunch Room, Frunchroom, as pronounced by the Southsiders as the front room. It's called the Frunch Room. So I will be one of 5 speakers, I believe, talking, and I'll be telling a railroad story. And don't we owe somebody a happy something or another here? No? 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 Okay. Fine then. I think we're done.
I believe we are.
Let's put a cork in it.
Well,
He needs to go home and watch Snowpiercer, so don't worry.
Yeah.
No, I was watching Snakes on a Train.
You didn't even talk about your DVD there.
You finally watched. You
No,
finally
they're
watched
not- they're
Snakes
not
on the Train.
DVDs.
They're not. What are they?
Old radio programs.
Oh, radio programs. Oh, the old technology.
Yeah, the good stuff.
So what'd you think about Snakes on the Train?
I never seen an anaconda get that big.
They showed Murder on the Orient Express either Tuesday or Wednesday night on 32.2 on broadcast. For us dinosaurs that don't have cable,
I don't.
with Sean Connery and Jack.
Okay, you had the the old
the
one.
second one.
Yeah.
Sean Connery.
Oh,
From the British Army in India.
What we were just mentioning. For those of you that are into old time radio programs and stuff,
Like this one.
like me, they got a collection of stories called Tracks of Terror. All railroad stories that were on the old radio days: Mysterious Traveler, Suspense, The Whistler, Escape, Inner Sanctum, and they had the Lux Radio Theater with an hour long version of Strangers on a Train with Ray Milland. Good Hitchcock movie. And but these are fun to listen to. There's even one story by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle about the missing express. Sherlock Holmes type story. So
Sounds like 2 of Clive Cussler's novels.
The PBS show Endeavor, which
Yes.
runs on Sunday night, they had it was a sort of a train themed
yes, it
show
was.
with
week,
with the murderous train spotter.
Yes.
I couldn't believe that. I saw that going, oh my God. It was interesting.
Yeah.
The rail fan was.
He was.
You know why some of the train crews don't like some of the rail fans?
This guy was truly. Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
He was on the autistic side.
Yes, he was out there. It was interesting. I was watching another program, 2-parter, Midsummer's Murders,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and they had to go to Wales. And son of a gun, they had to go into Snowdon, and that's where the Welsh Highland Railway runs. And part 1 and part 2 both had a nice Garrett locomotive running in the 2-foot gauge Garrett running in the background on the hillside while they're discussing things to do.
Oh yeah, I think I missed this locomotive part, but I did see most of the show.
Yeah, they were going there looking at the slate mines and stuff.
Right.
And but yeah, in the second episode, all of a sudden in the back, and Blanche goes, "I knew it. We couldn't get away with one. Had to have a train in it." Well, on that happy note, as the old master would say, happy rails to you. As our express comes into the station, we want to thank you for joining us through our journey through our wonderful world of trains. Chicago Junction is a production of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and can be listened to on the web at www.windycityhometown.com, where you can listen to tonight's broadcast and all of our past episodes if you so desire, and also sample some of the other fine programs that are being offered. This is your announcer, Brian Ballou. Till next month, when we journey to Chicago Junction.
You have been listening to Chicago Junction on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Monday, July 16th, the year 2018. Chicago Junction was produced and directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich and executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Chicando. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Thursday, July the 12th, the year 2018. Until next time, friends, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois.